Hello, everyone. It's Fiona here from FionaMarks.com, and I'm delighted to be back with my friend and colleague Amy, talking with you all about astrology and parenting. But before we get into today's topic, I wanted to give Amy a chance to say hello to everybody and to introduce herself. So, can I invite you to introduce yourself, Amy?
Sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Amy Behrens. I live in the United States, and I am a parent coach who helps parents anywhere to develop more clarity, confidence, and connection with their children. And I really enjoy helping parents at all stages of from babies to adulthood, and just really connecting and being clear on what you want, and finding ways to step into your full self as a parent.
Yeah, exactly. And no wonder we get together for these conversations, because I think astrology is a wonderful way to become grounded in the self, and from that place of groundedness, claim one's role in the world. So let's share the screen to begin with, because each week we've been working our way through some topics together. And we've talked about how different planets can perhaps affect the way that we parent, that sometimes we might parent in a more challenging and demanding way, where we're really trying to lift the child or attract the child to greatness. You know, we're bringing them up. And sometimes we might parent in a more supportive and accepting or cheer squad kind of way, where we're really at the grassroots with them and we just see them, and we're just like, yay. So that was our first topic. And then the second topic, we really talked about how unique the relationship is between you and your child, and between your parenting partner and the child, that's a different relationship, that through astrology we can see how our children play a particular role in our life based on where they are in the chart. And then last week we talked about how much is nurture and how much is nature, and whether innately sometimes we feel these frustrations and psychological pressures that lead to behavioral patterns and temper explosions. And so we were talking all about how astrology can reveal that. Now, for this week, I wanted, in our final topic, to reflect on our own experience with our own parents and how that comes to play in your relationship with your children. So you guys will have already seen the primer, but I left us with some reflection questions around, did you notice that you had a different relationship in your family with your parents than your siblings did? And that sometimes siblings, one of the siblings will just have a great way of connecting, say, with dad, and another one of the siblings will have a great way of connecting with mom. But everybody's kind of having their unique relationships with the parent. Can you relate to that, Amy?
Definitely. No, when I look at my sisters, and I'm one of three girls, and um, I think there are ways that I've always understood my mother, in
Yes.
particular, my dad and and there are other ways that my dad has been sort of like intellectually my like I've connected with him that way, but in terms of like my overall emotional being, I'm much more like my mother. Whereas my middle sister, she and my dad are much more emotionally in tune with each other. And then my youngest sister, I think, she and I are more similar to each other. Um, and she, I think, and my mom, and I mean, she has a different, but all three of us have different relationships with them because there's different personality resonances, I guess is how I would call it.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be really interesting when we're on the other side of that as the parent, that we, have the intention to parent equally, or, equitable, or, that we treat our children the same.
Mhm.
And yet the connecting, the child connecting into that is going to connect so differently to that, and see this same behavior as being like a really great thing or completely unacceptable, or have their own reaction to it. So it can be quite, I don't know, funny, strange as a parent, that it's something that in some ways you don't have as much control over as you think you would.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of acceptance and letting go that has to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, and Amy and I were talking before we came on camera about the overall theme of, this series that we've been doing, and I was sharing with her that, like, just what you said then, Amy, about acceptance and just being in the present. Really breathing in the present moment and treating the parenting partner and the child or our own parents as they are, where they are. So I think that's what astrology can help us to do. Let's see, Edward, any other. Do you notice it in the second question with your own children that they have individual relationships with you, even though you, by and large, raise them the same way? Some of them click with that and some of them don't.
I was thinking as you were talking about how my husband is really, he was an English professor and he's also really good at Spanish and Portuguese. And so my children tend to go, I also taught English and social studies before becoming a parent coach. Um, but I've noticed that the way that I help my oldest daughter is not like it used to be. She comes to me for a generation of ideas, but she goes to him for bringing things like making things more concise because
Yeah.
that's one of his gifts. And so I will feel myself like starting to be like, why won't you come to me? But then and then like needing to let go and be like, this is what, like she needs what he has to offer right now. And it's
Yeah.
different than what I have to offer, and then she'll come to me with other things and just knowing that they're going to naturally seek out. And at the same time, also, I remember like with each of the girls, I have three daughters myself as well. Um, when they were little, like they start to prefer mom to put them to bed. And then we had to kind of consciously have, dad also be the one putting you to bed because I wanted them to, like, he wanted to have that bond. And I also wanted
Yes.
him to have that bond. And I asked, my youngest one, like, what is it? And she's like, well, you're just more squishy
Yeah.
and you like to talk about feelings more. And that's what I want to do. And that's why I like it more.
Yeah.
And so I told my husband, like, and so he made a conscious like effort to ask a little bit more about feelings from the day and to kind of satisfy like what she was needing, that because he was more like, all right, it's bedtime, good night, see you in the morning, and she wanted a little more conversation. um, and then there's other times like recently where she's been preferring him to to go in, and because um, she's wanted to be going to bed earlier and he doesn't like take as much time because now
Yep.
I'm taking too much time. So it's just funny how
Yep.
what they need also varies over time.
Yep.
I think different ages. I think this goes back to our conversation about parenting styles, because sometimes your parenting style is really like, if you're more of a care and nurturance type of parent, you do really well when they're little. And then when they get into teenage times where they're pushing away a little bit more, you have a harder time. Your feelings are more hurt. Whereas if you're more of a parent who's, I think, reason and expectations and like more like that might be really hard with like little children who want comfort. But when they get into like wanting to talk about ideas and have discussions, then that might be your time of really enjoying your children more. So, and I certainly saw that with my dad, who's like very much in his head. Um,
Yes.
he was a good, he was like very present as a when I was younger, but he really enjoyed like the middle school and teen years more because he could talk to us. Whereas like my mom was definitely the one who we went to more when we were little because she's more the caring
Yes.
type. So it's just that's interesting.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And I think this is the richness of those experiences. And have you also noticed that the way that you relate to your parenting partner and that interchange that you have is different from the way they then relate to the children? So that's one of the things that I think surprised me when I became a parent, was that I'd actually been with my husband for nearly 20 years. This is someone that I knew like inside out, back to front. We'd been through a lot together, including, moving continents and languages and, everything. And then I was on all of his relationships with me. He's just the kindest, sweetest, I've never heard a cruel word out of his mouth. But then when we had a child, I noticed that his relationship with his child was not the relationship that I have with him, and not that he's in any way inappropriate with her or violent with her or anything like that. But I just noticed that that's a really unique connection that they have, where he probably steps more into the discipline space and giving boundaries, that just doesn't need to be present in a peer-to-peer relationship that we're in, but in a parent-to-child relationship. There's another dynamic there that I hadn't seen in 20 years of cohabitating with this person. So I think there's, your kids, the relationship that you have with your children really brings out something unique in you as well, or potentially can.
Definitely. I'm thinking of several clients who part of why they come to me for parent coaching is because they are in the grips of like this the way either like it's a number of things like one it could be that the way their partner is relating to the child is really bugging them, and
Right.
so they're like
Yes.
and they used to like they had a very pacific relationship before they had children, but now with children because what happens is you have a little person who like as they get into being 2 and 3 is resisting and saying no and they're individuating, and so that triggers I think in parents I think how you were parented starts coming out more. And so you might have had like a great relationship with your parenting partner, but then when you have a little child who's being difficult or who's just being themselves, um, the way they let's say they feel like well children should just be obedient. They should just do what I say, and I don't know why they're resisting me, and then it kind of creates some stress. One parent came to me because her husband was saying the same thing all the time. She's like, I can't stand hearing those words of just, just do it or listen. And and through coaching, as he's gained skills for how to respond to their daughter in a more like listening to her needs and her feelings, and helping her kind of work through. And they interestingly have found that art is a common language that he and his daughter have. And so when they're frustrated with each other, she will draw him a picture and he'll draw her a picture, and that's like one of the ways they communicate. But he
Yes.
doesn't have to say those annoying words. Like his wife's like, I'm so glad he's not saying listen, 10 times a day. And it just and then other people, I think there's also sometimes like a loss of relationship with your parenting partner if you're consumed, like if you have multiple children quickly. um,
Yes.
that I've seen also. And so then recognizing, I often think of it as like a triangle, like you have like sorry, an inverted triangle. You have the parents on either side, and
Yes.
then the child or the children, and you have to have all three of those bonds. Like each parent has to have a bond with their child and then with each other. And if you let go of your relationship with your parenting partner, it flips the balance. And
Yep.
then so you really, so I work a lot with self-care and also making sure that your relationship with your partner that you're still having time. Now, if you don't have a parenting partner, then like who are the people supporting you in your life, and how are your relationships with those people?
Yeah, I mean, this is just such a rich area, because of these interrelated relationships that we're having, because we've all experienced our own parents, who, molded us when we were nonverbal and, through becoming and perceiving the world. And as we talked about in the primer, those parents they may have fit into that stereotype of the mother being the emotional place of comfort and the father being the directional and sense of discipline and being more, straight lines or boxes and squares, and the mother being more circles and round and soft. So that may have been the archetype that I've experienced, perhaps. But it could be the other way around, that my
Yes.
mother was the disciplinarian and she was on top of everything, managing the home, and the father was the indulgent one who was, allowing that escape from routine by, taking the kids out of the house, and, all hell can break loose when dad's, around because he's a fun dad or whatever. And many other versions of that. But we have imprinted in us these expectations of what parents do. And then you find a partner, which is like a peer-to-peer relationship, and you test that person that they match with your views and values or whatever, and then you bring a child or children into that, and now that's no longer, that you're not seeing that peer-to-peer relationship. You're also getting to see your own parent to child and your partner's parent to child. And so it's like we've got these three generations, the children, ourselves, and our own parents
Mhm.
all of these expectations of how one should be are kind of in a melting pot, and we don't necessarily have an instruction manual for dealing with that. And I think like one of the things that astrology does is helps us in astrology that relationship with your partner is ruled by the seventh house. So it's planets that are in the seventh house or who own the seventh house that determine that relationship. Whereas your relationship with your children is based on your fifth house, and your children's relationship with you is based on their fourth and 10th house. So we kind of got these, these prongs trying to catch each other and make these connections, but they've all got slightly different places where they're starting. So I find it fascinating, and I think astrology is a great way to pick that apart and kind of objectify it a little bit. But so is coaching, because you get a chance to problem solve, with a third party who's like, only interested in assisting like you were talking about, connection and clarity
Mhm.
within the family.
It's as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, so like let's say you have a parent who is having a challenge. Um, how would you use their chart to help them cope with the challenge?
Well, this is where it gets really, really complex, because you have to see the individual chart. But for example, you could have someone who, if the child is born as an Aries ascendant,
Mhm.
then naturally the child expects a mothering relationship that is related to the moon, related to that Cancer energy. So really receptive of the emotional flow, and is expecting a parent on the paternal side, a father relationship with someone more with Capricorn energy, Saturn energy, being more disciplinarian, being dry, never giving any ease to the situation, always on that. So that sets up the child to a little bit, strongly favor those maybe perhaps traditional stereotypes that we have of the receptive mother and the disciplinarian father. But then, in some ways, for that child with that ascendant, regardless of how the parent is, the child is always going to receive the father a little bit through that Saturn energy. So is possibly going to have that rub
Mhm.
um, of always running up against the discipline, and equally always falling into the softness of the mother. So it depends where that person would be coming from. Like, is it the child trying to improve their relationship, depending on the age of the child? Why is it that I'm having this struggle with my father? Or is it the father, who perhaps is a very soft and emotional person, trying to understand why can't make that connection with the child, why there's from the child this resistance and like pushback to that
Mhm.
situation. So but then, I mean, that's just taking one ascendant for one child, and we don't know what the parent and what the father and what the mother would be in that situation. So
I'm
like,
hearing is that it helps understand the why about like from a planetary perspective of what might be happening. And then I think like where I am with my work is like, okay, so this is so understanding from a different angle about some of the why that this is happening. And I think I tend to think in terms of needs and feelings. And so,
yes.
for example, when a child is acting out, helping parents to understand what is that child really needing. And sometimes when the parent is acting out, understand what they're really needing in that
Yes.
moment. Because I think, for like this woman who I was coaching this morning, um, she was discovering that her anger is actually more related to not feeling like she ever gets to meet her own needs because she's always meeting everybody else's needs. And so, if we can help her have permission to meet her own needs more, then that is going to allow her to feel more present with her children rather than feeling in this defended space of stop battering at me with all your needs. And also, it models for her children, um, this is what it means to take care of yourself. because right now she's modeling for them giving, 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 which is wonderful in some ways, but then like it's imbalanced. And I think that's what we have to do, is like sort of bring back the balance so that everybody's needs. And I think there's another thing I help parents think about is just that like everyone deserves to have their needs met within a family system. And we're a system. We're not just like all helping the child or all helping the mom or the, you know, the other parent. We need to think about how everybody needs to get their needs met. And I think some children end up, if they're feeling like their needs matter more than their parents all the time, then you have an imbalance. And they're like, so helping to know that we matter also. Or you might have the opposite, where kids are neglected because the parents just meeting their needs and not attending to their kids' needs. So each family is different. Like that's what I love about my work, is that every family has their own unique system. And but I love thinking in terms of a system, because we all have effects on each other.
Yes, that's right. I enjoy that as well. I think it's a great way to be more dynamic about this family that we're creating, that we're experiencing. I think the other thing is also accepting that, like we go back to that Aries ascendant example, accepting that, and maybe this is what astrology is also showing us, accepting that sometimes people make things difficult for themselves, and that we might not have difficulties in that area.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so we don't want that person to have a difficulty in that area. But because of the way their planetary energies are, this is where that drama is for them. And that, um, embracing the free will of everyone to have their blind spots or their area where they might make life difficult, and just that, this word acceptance that keeps coming up, but just, yeah, that's right, everybody has somewhere that,
Hmm.
they overcomplicate things, or no matter how hard they try, they feel like they're pushing up against a brick wall. And maybe just breathing with that a bit and being like, yeah, yes, that is the dynamic that's happening. And from that breath, which takes some time with that, like being still with
Hmm.
that. And, then we can move forward with strategies and solutions. It's a little bit like, sometimes maybe we can be frantic, to want to change something and to improve it. And, um, sometimes just making sure that we take the time to be still with how it really is, to feel how it really is, to honor that,
Right.
and just see if there's any gems in there for us already, because, um, maybe there's a lesson there, or there's something that we're wanting to take or learn from this situation. And rather than always trying to change or improve it, um, we can accept it first. and
Right.
and that's definitely, I think that's, you know as a coach, as an Ayurvedic coach, that was always my approach. And now with astrology, it's even more my approach to really honor the situation that we're in, even if
Hmm.
it's difficult and even if it seems undesirable. Let's just stay there. And this is a little bit like the story that you've just described about someone comes to see you, because they're almost enraged, like it's frustrating and they've had enough, and they think that the only option is, you know, some kind of explosive, taking back my space or whatever it is. And in that conversation with you, actually, there's been a moment where we've stayed in the present, and a
Hmm.
completely unseen door has opened up, that has brought in this self-care element. And whereas when we're quick to act, because I'll get out of this situation, anything I do will be better than what I'm doing now, because it'll be a change. That sometimes we miss the opportunity, the gift that's really hidden in there, that, like you're sharing in this example, might be that I need to look after myself. There's some nurturing that I need to give. And that's the beautiful lesson to
Hmm.
find.
You're also making me think about fixing energy versus being energy. And I think
Yeah.
I gave a talk with a group of doctors this past weekend on resilience. And one of the things that was really coming up for this group of parents was that it's really uncomfortable to watch your children suffer,
Yes.
especially if you're a physician and like your job is you help people, you fix people. And so watching your child suffer is really painful. And so there's a desire to just like make them, make it better, or just like get them to like to do what they're supposed to be doing. And you have time pressure as well, which is that's a whole other layer of stress. So one of the things we're talking about is how to, in those moments, I often use the metaphor of duct tape. Like if you just sort of think about duct taping your mouth, and I got that from Vicky Huffle, who wrote this book called Duct Tape Parenting. But like for myself, just like imagining like my mouth cannot open right now, and I just need to be like, like that's hard, and to lean into, and then because I don't have duct tape on my mouth, I can also say to them, you know, what do you want to do about that? Like, sounds like this is hard. This is hard. You're wanting this, you're wanting this. Like, I can help them. And this is where the clarity piece comes in. So I can help people sort of tease out what are the different elements operating. And then what seems like it would help with that situation so that you're also trusting that you have within you what you need to help solve that problem just by uncovering. I often have people use their hand like, okay, so there's this wrong and there's this wrong, because just like counting that out, then you have it out on the table. Just like if you have to clean out a messy drawer, you often have to take out all the pieces and then be like, do I need this? No. Do I need this? Yes. And then you can have some order and some clarity there, and then it slides in and out much more smoothly than when it's like full of jumble. uh, so I think that the seeds of resilience come from both leaning in and helping people to discern, but also stepping back. So you like lean in and then you step back, because if you take over, you get in the way,
I,
and you also disempower.
exactly. I think this is really where astrology can be so powerful, because fundamentally it's hinting at
Mm-hmm.
everything is happening exactly as it should. That's kind of like an underlying philosophy or
Yeah.
something, that if you want to accept that astrology says something about you or has insights to share with you, then you kind of have to accept that things are unfolding in the way that they've been meant to unfold. And there's a bit of kind of surrender there, isn't there, to
Yeah.
this is exactly the parenting dynamic that I am in right now. And this is how I am experiencing my child or my children and my partner. And what if I surrender to that as okay, even when it's uncomfortable and when it's sub ideal? What if I surrender to that's exactly where I am? It's where I'm supposed to be. And where are the gifts? Where are those doors that open up when I just stay here long enough to perceive it? We
Mm-hmm.
were we were playing on YouTube last night, a kind of like spot the hidden object thing. They give you 10 seconds and they tell you that it's a field full of pandas, but there's a rabbit hidden in there or whatever. And I also play one of those hidden object games where everything you're supposed to find, the book and the pair of glasses and whatever, the paper knife, they're all in the scene. But we feel this pressure of the time, and it stops us from calmly absorbing all the truth that is there, either in this find the objects game or in this little optical illusions that we're playing. And isn't it funny that those games that we love to play, the artist has to put the object right there on the screen, like they can't not put it there, so it's there. And I guess life is a little bit like that with astrology. It's kind of saying everything you need is right here. Just breathe for a moment and really see where you are. Have
I love
faith.
that analogy. Oh, that's great.
I know. I know. I mean, both both coaching and astrology, they just give support to parents and, help us like engage and be alive in the learning and growth that being a parent is. So it's a joy to have time to chat with you about it. I think we're so lucky. We were just saying off camera, we were so lucky to to be with people during a time when they are open to, yeah, really gaining the potential from these relationships that we call a family.
And I think that a family is sort of a journey to self-discovery,
Yeah.
because you are perceiving yourself in relation to others, and so you have to know yourself in order to know others. And also, children hold up mirrors that sometimes you're like, "Oh, don't look
I
at that."
know.
And
Totally.
sometimes they hold up a mirror and you see with delight, like,
Yes.
wow, they have absorbed this thing that I've been
Yes.
saying 15 million times, or they saw me do this thing one time and they've absorbed that way of being. But I think like that co-creative process of raising children and raising yourself, because it also offers you this opportunity to kind of reparent yourself, because
Yep.
all of us look back and we know parent is perfect. We're not going to be perfect, and our parents were not perfect. And so sometimes thinking, what did I experience that I want to try to do differently? And what do I want to pass on that I loved from my own parents? And recognizing that we're going to be different. We're living in a different time, in a different environment, different partners, different children. So it can never be the same. But I find that really fascinating, just to think about like what are the things I want to pass down and what are the things I don't want to pass down.
Yeah, yeah, that's a topic for a whole nother
Yeah.
conversation. But it goes really well with this one. I mean, it's hard. I think astrologers, we bury ourselves in this, whole model of astrology, but we can kind of see through astrology, like I don't know, some kind of Rubik's cube or something. We can see these relationships,
Mhm.
exactly what you're saying of what you want to pass on and what you want to let let
Let
go
go.
here. Yeah, that's right. That doesn't need to go into the future. And of course your children provoke in you, things that you never expected. Amy, it's delightful to speak with you. Thank you so much for giving us time over the past several weeks to talk about parent coaching. And I hope that we'll get to do it sometime in the future, a whole new set of topics. I would really love to do that again.
Thank you. It's been a delight for me as well. And thank you all for listening.
Yeah. Okay. Bye, everyone. We'll see you in the future sometime. Bye bye.